Hey, it's a beautiful fall day out here at the old mountaineer's cabin in the valley of Turkey Creek. We thought we'd do a little shooting today. So what we're going to shoot today, we're going to shoot a 62 caliber smoothbore Northwest trade gun. Now the Northwest trade gun was sold and traded probably for about 140 years in this same basic configuration. By the time of the American Revolution, it had all these standard features. Of course, they'd been making smoothbore trade guns for the Indian trade since the late 1600s, both the French and the English. It was a big trade for them. They were trading these guns, cheap guns, for furs. The Indians liked the guns really well. The trade gun is such a versatile gun because you can load it with a round ball for hunting big game, or you can load it with shot, or in a pinch you can even load it with some small pea gravel. So it was really a versatile gun for the frontier. Although most Americans after the Revolution and through the fur trade preferred rifles, it was actually the smoothbore that the frontier families used to get their meat and protect themselves, and of course the Indians used them a lot, and a lot of the early fur traders, the French coureurs de bois, the English traders that went out among the Indian tribes, they carried smoothbores as well. The Northwest trade gun got its name because when it was being traded, when it first started getting traded to the Indians up around the Great Lakes, that was the Northwest territory of the what would become the United States. Of course, around 1760 it started taking on these features: a good, sturdy, big lock, octagon to round barrel, smooth bore, so they could, as I said, load shot or ball. The big flat butt stock with the flat brass butt plate. Those were, depending on the maker, they were either screwed on or nailed on. And of course, the telltale sign of a trade gun, a Northwest trade gun, was the serpent side plate, made out of brass, and the Indians looked for that. And then the big trigger bow as well. There again, as I said, these guns by the time of the Revolution had pretty much this configuration, and they were actually traded by Hudson's Bay Company all the way up to 1900. So well over 140 years they traded these guns with the Indians. They finally stopped, Hudson's Bay requested that they finally stop putting flintlocks on them around 1886. Of course, they'd been making a few percussion guns by then, but from 1886 up through 1900, the Northwest trade gun was a percussion gun. So this one, as I said, is a 62 caliber. They were made in various calibers from about 54 and 58 on up through 62, and Lehman in the 1880s had government contracts to even make some in 69 to 72 caliber as well. So a wide range of calibers on these guns. As I said, it's a very versatile gun. Today, most smoothbore flintlock shooters are loading with, they're using card wads and felt wads to load their shot, but back on the frontier you didn't have things like that. So you would use various natural products, maybe a cottonwood tree leaf rolled up and stuffed down the bore as wadding would work. Today I'm going to be using wasp nest. Very, very effective natural product. You folks up there where they have the big paper wasp nests, that would make good wadding as well. So the Northwest trade gun, 62 caliber smoothbore. This one has a 42-inch barrel, As an American, I'm mostly a rifleman, so I'm going to see if I can actually hit that 15-inch gong down range about 40 yards. So let's load her up and see what we can do. So I'm going to take my powder measure, and this one's set for 80 grains. If I was going to load shot today, I would use this 80 grain powder measure for my powder, and then I would use the same measure to measure out my shot. But today we're going to be shooting a round ball, a 610 caliber round ball. So I put my powder down the bore, hit it a little bit to make sure that powder is settled. Put my stopper back in my powder horn. I don't want sparks going down there. Now I'm going to take a piece of this wasp nest. I'm going to mash it up a little bit, and I'm going to stick it in the bore. I'm going to run it down on top of that powder charge. Then I'm going to take my big 610 caliber ball and put it in the bore, and I'm going to make sure that's seated down there on that wasp nest. Then I'm going to take one more piece of wasp nest, wad it up, stick it in the bore, and run it down, and that's going to hold my ball down there as I go along through my day hunting or scouting in the woods or whatever it is I'm going to do. As always with a flintlock, I take my vent pick, make sure my touch hole is clear, run it in that touch hole good, and then, as was practice on the frontier, I'm going to prime my pan with my main horn. Now this is 2F powder, so it's probably a little slower ignition than if I were using 3F or 4F for priming, but it ought to work. So I'm going to step down here and we're going to see if we can hit that gong. Well, I hit it. It's a little low, but it would have killed the deer, so I'm happy with that. Now, as you just saw, it is my habit when I shoot a muzzle loader to blow down the bore. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm getting ready to pour more powder down there, and powder being an explosive, I don't want that flashing up in my face if there's a hot ember still burning down there. So, in disregard of the first two rules of gun safety, which, number one, all guns are always loaded. Number two, never let the muzzle look at anything you're not willing to destroy. I put that up and I blew down it. Now, some people will take me to task over that, but most guys I know who handle firearms at some time or another have looked down the bore of a gun. They had the bolt out or the action open or whatever on their modern firearms. They put it up and they looked down the bore to check the bore to make sure it was clean or see what the rifling looked like or whatever. So, and they do that in disregard of those first two rules of gun safety. So, to me, to make sure there are no hot embers down there to ignite the powder when I pour it down the bore, that's my primary safety concern at the time. I've just fired the gun, I know it's empty, and I don't want any hot embers. Plus, on a muzzle loader, when you shoot black powder, you shoot and the burning powder creates a lot of fouling in the bore, and blowing down the bore has the added advantage of softening and loosening that powder for when you run your next load down. So I'm going to load her up one more time and we'll shoot it again. Safety habit is to make sure that that horn is always plugged so that when you shoot, you don't have an errant spark go down there and ignite that bomb on the side of your pouch. Take my wasp nest wadding. Run it down, make sure it's all seated. My big round lead ball in the bore. It's seated. And my last wad to make sure that that ball stays down on the powder. You never want airspace in your shot string or your load string in a muzzle loader, because that black powder is an explosive, and if you have airspace in there, it could rupture your barrel. Not a pleasant thing. Make sure my touch hole is clear. Prime my pan. Alright, let's try her again. Well, hit the gong again, so that's another dead deer. The Northwest trade gun. This one's 62 caliber. A good gun for hunting deer at under 50 yards. Also loaded up with number 5 shot and a good heavy load. You can hunt turkey, load it down a little bit, and you can hunt squirrel. That's the way they did it on the frontier, and that's the way we do it here on Turkey Creek in the year of our Lord 1823. Watch your top knot.